First speaker today, Anay Mann, and I'm going to request Vicky Roy to come up and introduce him. Vicky.
Thank you so much, Dinesh sir. It's my pleasure to introduce you Anay sir. And Anay sir, why? Because Anay sir मेरे teacher है. I learned photography under him, so that's why. So अनय सर से मैं पहली बार 2005 में मिला और मैं उस समय मुझे फ़ोटोग्राफी सीखनी थी एंड अनय सर इज़ ए फैंटास्टिक मेंटोर, सो दैट्स वाई मैं बताना चाहता हूँ कि मैं किस तरीके से उनसे मिला एंड किस तरीके से उन्होंने मुझे फ़ोटोग्राफी टीच किया. सो मैं 2005 में मिला अनय सर से एंड मैं गया उनसे मिलने के लिए एंड अनय सर ने कहा कि मेरा असिस्टेंट नेक्स्ट मंथ जा रहा, तो आप प्लीज़ नेक्स्ट मंथ से मुझे ज्वाइन कर लो. तो मैंने कहा कि ठीक है सर. सो ही सेड कि मैं आपको 3000 सैलरी दूंगा, सेल फ़ोन दूंगा, बाइक दूंगा. तो मुझे लगा वाह यार, इतना बढ़िया जॉब, सेल फ़ोन और बाइक मिल रहा है. और बोला महीने में मेरा 8-10 दिन का काम होता है, बाकी दिन आप फ्री हो, तो आपको जो मर्जी करना है आप करो, ठीक है. सो दैट्स हाउ आई मीट अनय सर. एंड जब मैं उनको असिस्ट करना चालू किया, सो लाइक किस तरीके से एक यंग फोटोग्राफ़र को एक अच्छे मेंटोर की ज़रूरत होती है, वो चीज़ मुझे समझ में आने लगा. कि जैसे मैं अगर अनय सर इज़ ए कमर्शियल फोटोग्राफ़र ऑल्सो, सो जब हम लोग शूट पे जाते थे और असाइनमेंट के दौरान अगर मैं कुछ गलती करता था क्लाइंट के सामने, सो लाइक वो कंधे पे हाथ डाल के दूर लेके जाते थे कि विक्की क्या कर रहे थे यार तुम, ठीक है. सो लाइक सबके सामने नहीं डांटते थे. सो दैट्स द गुड थिंग अनय सर, थैंक यू सो मच टू टीच मी. और अनय सर के काम किन किन मैगजीन्स के लिए करते हैं मैं उनको बताना चाहूँगा. अनय सर फोर्ब्स, फॉर्चून, न्यूयॉर्क टाइम, बिजनेस 20 टाइम एशिया, न्यूज़ वीक, लाइफ मैगज़ीन के लिए अनय सर असाइनमेंट करते थे. और जो अनय सर का काम है वो इंटरनेशनली काफ़ी ट्रैवल किया है, लंदन, हॉलैंड, फाइनलैंड, ब्राज़ील, जर्मनी, स्विट्ज़रलैंड. सो अनय सर का काम इन सब जगहों पे ट्रैवल किया है. अब मैं अनय सर को बुलाना चाहूँगा कि सर आइए और अपना प्रेजेंटेशन प्लीज. थैंक यू.
Thank you, Vicky, for your kind words, and thank you, DPF, for giving me an opportunity to talk to all of you, to present my work to you guys. Now, when I talking about desire, it's not that all my work is, it's not titled Understanding Desire, but this is the underlying basic thing which kind of runs through all my work. And the intimacy, identity, masculinity, they are the subtext that you will notice in most of the images. I was here when I was here to hear the keynote address by David Company, and David Company was talking about about photographers being hunters. And I remember reading a book by Jeff Wall where he has theorized, I think back in 70s sometime, how photographers can be divided into two distinct camps, hunters and farmers. So hunter photographers are people who track down their subjects in a pregnant environment and capture the images. And farmers, photographers are one who cultivate their images over a period of time and harvest them when they are ripe. Since I had no photography formal education as such, I was looking, when I started out, I was looking at the other stalwarts of Indian photography, and I kind of worked in that particular manner. So basically I was a hunter photographer at that point of time. And I think at some point of time I turned over to be a farmer. So I'll show you some of the images which I started out as a hunter. And so... Well, I think at some point of time, what you saw right now was my project Generation in Transition. That was my first work which I started. And I think I started photography way back in 2001. And when I was a hunter, so I was on the streets trying to look for images that I can capture, but I couldn't really not even finish my role in one day. So I could start, and after 15 or 16 frames, I kind of ran out of subjects and did not know what to shoot. And I was also realizing that could not relate to my subjects which I was photographing as such. And I started photographing my friends, and I was hanging out with them in the be it coffee shop or clubs or in the houses and everything. And that's how Generation in Transition, the project, was born, and for which the Habitat Center gave me a grant, and that kind of encouraged me to do that kind of work further. So as I said, intimacy, again, I have spread out all these things separately so that they don't really get boring. So I'm looking at one aspect once in a while and showing you some more images. So when we talk about intimacy in photography, is also a reconstitution of the subtext of domestic relationships. It's almost an exercise in pathology of visual interpretation of unguarded private moments, seeking to interpret the origins or manifestations of the subject's emotional lives. Now, I do a lot of I get kind of commissions for family portraits, so I do their pictures. And when doing family portraits, sure, it's not about getting all those people together and taking the shot. It's also about a lot of putting, layering it various other things, various other nuances which we kind of observe. And also, as I said, 2001 I started with Generation Transition. That was my first project, but I was also shooting my wife all through these years. I've been married for a long time now. So when I took the camera in 2001, I also started experimenting with color photography, and at that point of time I was shooting my wife most of the time, she was home and whatever she was doing. So I was kind of looking at those images. Some point of time I also realized that some other photographers have also photographed their wives, and maybe there's some pictures that you should look at. That's I think Amit Gavin, the work that you look at here. Amit Gavin again, Harry Kellen. So these are there are a lot of other photographers who have photographed the intimacy or other photographed their wives in a very intimate environment. So About Nitika was one of those projects, and initially when I was doing the project, I had never thought of the fact that I would ever display those images. They were supposed to be vignettes of our daily life, and they were not really meant for public consumption. I don't really think that the project is over as such. I'm still photographing her. But it's just that in 2007, I think there was a curator from AL who happened to see all my other works, and he happened to like this one the most, and he convinced me that maybe I should show it to the world, or share it with other people. And I'll show you some of the images from that work. So this is called About Nitika. Nitika is my wife for a good 18 years now. She doesn't really like her images because I don't really show her the way she would want to be seen. Slowly, I also started introducing myself in the pictures, more so from Nitika's point of view. I'm her husband, so from that perspective, I started coming in the images, and everything is from her perspective in any which case. But this was the first time I turned the camera onto myself. Uh, so I think at some point of time I also decided that whatever had to be said, I can also use myself as the protagonist and like to talk about things. I can use my body as the site of investigation and put myself in the frame and talk about things which are like no are dear to me or which are close to me or say it through my own personal body. And that's when I started doing, if one can call it, self-portraiture, where I was using myself and the whole kind of tableau which I was creating, or mise-en-scène which I was kind of creating, was all about keeping me in mind as such. And as I said, I had become a farmer now, so for me, the act of photography itself doesn't really take much time. It's the thinking process which takes ages or months at times. For example, I might think of a project or think of some series of works for about 6 months, and shooting it might take me just 2 days or something. So the photography per se doesn't take time. It's just the thinking about it is like, it's a longer process for me. So talking about self-portraiture or the use of self-portraiture by photographers is like this is like a really old thing, and I think this is one of the oldest self-portrait that you're looking at. I think it was the portrait of a drowned man back in 1840 sometime, and that's Francesca Woodman. See, various photographers have used their own bodies for self-portraitures in different manners. And obviously, when talk about self-portraiture, Cindy Sharma is one of the foremost names that comes to mind. That's Sarah Lucas, American photographer. That's John Copland. And of course, we all know Andy Warhol. So in self-portrait, or rather when I've been doing, been shooting Nitika and I was shooting all the family portraits, I observe a lot about domesticity, about role playing, at how relationships work. Like, one person would be slightly dominating, the other person slightly submissive, and the way kind of relationship plays a lot of. If you observe people, there's a lot of small things that we can pick up, and we can see those things, and. Because I've been observing them and I know that so well, I decided to create this fictional account of two people living together and what they would be like. And so also, 1 second, I think, sorry. So before we go there, also this work was created as a part of a residency in Windsor. So when we talk about identity, An individual's identity consists of multiple intersecting factors, including gender, race, ethnicity, class, and sexuality. Not only do we have multiple identities for multiple audiences, it's also fluid and shift throughout one's life. So there was this residency which I called Art and Fashion, which I did at Coach, and we were talking about fashion per se. So this is something which happens to all of us. We open the cupboard and we have to choose. Okay, like no, that what is it that we are going to wear today? So when we are choosing, what you're looking at is the fact that like where is it that we are going. So basically, what we have deciding into which part of my identity, as I said, like we have multiple identities. What part of my identity do I want to show, and who the audiences are? So if you are going into a club, you'll like show a different, maybe like a fun side of yours. If you're going to present a lecture, maybe like you'll show is maybe slightly more serious. Or maybe if you are going to a meet your grandparents, you'll dress up differently. So basically, these are different kind of identities which we are projecting on our audiences by means of wearing clothes. Now, talking about wearing clothes in India, for the longest time, maybe like before the before the Mughals came in, the attire most of the Indians were wearing was just a gamcha. Maybe the men were wearing a loincloth, and women were also wearing a cloth which they could cover the upper body and the lower body. Or in fact, a little earlier than that, they only used to cover the lower body itself. And so I thought so I went back to the fashion thing itself, and realized that 1980s there was this moment where people were writing on the t-shirts. So instead of conveying whatever you want to convey through our clothes in a subconscious sort of a way, we were directly writing on our t-shirts whatever we want the other person to understand of us. So like whatever was important to us, we would say those things, and that kind of became fashionable at point of time. And I decided that maybe I could also write whatever I wanted to write on my body. Then besides writing on my body, I was questioned the fact that what if my partner were to write on my body, how much more intimate will it be? And maybe only where my partner knows that what is it that he's written on my body, or maybe it's something that my partner would want to do to me when I get back home. And it's it's not really essential that the other person kind of get to know about it. But even if they kind of they did, it's just trying to communicate something as such. So this work was projected out there, trying to show different identities again of the same person. I think to really understand this work, I will have to read out the whole essay to everyone, and that might take a long time. So this was just about this in brief. So coming to masculinity, it's a social and biological construct. The roles, characteristics, and activities that distinguish men from women, besides the obvious biological differences, are socially constructed. Behaviors thought to be feminine or masculine differ from one culture to another across time periods. This work called The Red Room was also kind of I had read a theory, if you can call it theory of Plato, where he's talking about the fact that what if we were to meet someone who was an exact replica of ourselves? What if the person was exactly like us, who thought like us, and who would behave like us, and would like to do the same things that human would like? We would be so compatible, or the two people would be so compatible with each other that they would want to spend the rest of their lives with each other as such. So I kind of took that thought forward and kind of try to kind of create something out of that. And also subconsciously, even though I read this thing much later in life, but I've always had this thought that how difficult it is to find someone who just like you. So thereafter, most of my work these days is like in the kind of based of series. I don't really think that it's really possible to say everything in one picture itself. So I try to say that in a series of 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 images. The idea is to show the whole story and show it in a kind of I'm not really thinking it's like a short film, but kind of trying to show various aspects of those things in these images. So all of them are like series of images from 8 to 10 to 12 or to 15 images. This particular work called the Chongqing Tale was made in China. I had gone on a residency for 3 weeks to a smaller town, in the sense so a small town called Chongqing. I'm saying it's small because it's not really a famous place as such. Though in China, any small place will also be big. So it had the population of Delhi, but I think it was slightly smaller than that. So this was in there at the residency in Chongqing. And obviously, every time you visit another place, do residency, the influences of that particular place kind of come in out here, and the way that the images are displayed, or the way kind of they are being cut and everything. It's a very Chinese traditional tile format that's being done out here. And also in terms of colors and everything out here, there's this a director called Wong Kar-wai, and I've really been influenced with his work. And I think some point of time in terms of my lighting, you could see a bit of Wong Kar-wai here, or that's what I try to bring here. Also, there's a kind of story behind it, that why is it that I really want to dress up as a woman here. See, when I was growing up back in how old am I? So back in early 80s, we did not really have access to porn as much as we have now. And if I wanted to kind of look at another images, I did not know really where to go. So I used to dress up in my mom's clothing and look at myself in the mirror. So the person, the image in the mirror, and I became two different people. So I am the person who I am, and this person who's dressed as a woman is on the other side of the mirror. And so this is interaction which was happening between those two people in a kind of fantastical sort of a way. And things are going on in my mind as such. So it's kind of and obviously all the half the time you're reversing roles also. At times you're the man giving pleasure, at the times you're a woman receiving pleasure, and all those things happen. All that thing is visually happening in the same space itself, and it happens quite fast in the way the kind of the way dreams work. So I'm sure you guys have figured out that this other person is also me, though this person looks more like me here. So I also when all my work these days is drawn on personal experiences or desires or things which may happen with me. This particular work, I mean I was kind of I have a son now, and when my son was 3 or 4 years old, I kind of noticed some signs which were a little disturbing for me, or that's how I interpreted them. And they also kind of reminded me of back in my time when I was maybe 8 years old or 9 years old. I had these sexual experiences with people who are a lot older than me, and Personally, I think they were kind of fine for me, and I kind of, maybe they were pleasurable as well, and maybe it was like kind of education for me. But when I started thinking as a parent, there's a kind of conflict which arose in my mind as to like, I just thought like, maybe this is not something I would want my child to go through, irrespective of what I thought of it when I know it happened with me. This image kind of really scares me, even though I shot it, because out here, after whatever has happened, the child is looking at himself, not realizing what has happened, but he knows that something has changed in him. And this person who's a perpetrator of this situation obviously is looking at the child because, I mean, like, hey, he has done it, and whatever this thing he may have in him. And also, this person is also looking at you as the viewer, and it's like almost like cocking a snook that, like, no, yeah, this is me, and you found out, and what are you gonna do about it? It kind of also, like, points out to the way things are in society right now. I mean, things haven't really changed much as even when they were earlier. I remember going to my parents and telling them that, like, no, so and so things are happening in that manner, and my parents told me that maybe we shouldn't go there then. And so no one really addressed the whole situation at that point of time. I don't really know how much things have changed now. If this were to be happen to me as a parent, I frankly think maybe, like, no, I would rather be helpless, or maybe just might have the strength to knock off the person. Besides that, I don't know what else will I be able to do. So this person, like, no, he can appear wearing any of the masks. It's very difficult to kind of really figure out as to how he'll come, and like, how will you be able to identify him as such. So there was this residency again which I did at Khoj, which was about unraveling masculinities. And so I made this little video, and it was called Speaking in Platitudes. So what happens is, as we said, there are various traits that we have, or every person has, or every man has in himself. And some people may find the person masculine, or, like, no, not that masculine, or less masculine, depending on the culture that we are coming from and the timeline that we are looking at. So I asked another person, put another person in charge of taking an interview of people that I know, people that I have known for like 25 years, people whom I just met once, or people who are, like, in my classmate for like 10, or people who I've known for 10 years, both boys and girls. So basically, like, from various strata of the society as such, and they were and the person who was interviewing them was asking them as to what their views on masculinity were vis-a-vis me. As to, like, how much of a man do they think I was, or why did they think I was not a man enough for whatever reasons. And all of them we gave different examples of like, why they thought in a particular manner. And then there was another video which I kind of chanced upon on YouTube, which is I think it's made in Britain, and talks about, like, how we are constantly judging people based on their behavior, what they are doing, or how they're dressed up, and what do they do. So it's kind of quite funny. So I like show you both the videos one by one. And so in the installation, both videos were kept kind of in front of each other, and you could hear one video which they were talking in whichever manner they're talking, and another video saying all these things. So maybe I'll just try to run those through, so you might get an idea as to, like, so maybe the idea might come across. 1 second.
This Stop.
his own
Can I
self.
have a cordless mic?
Because you expect a traditional man doing the traditional things that men do. I think he's so much in touch with himself, and he's very comfortable with who he is. And I think that is the most important thing. As a friend, he's a very good listener. As a father, he's very nurturing. At the same time, he works, he does everything else. So I think that makes him a perfect 10. He's very comfortable being who he is, does whatever he wants to do. He doesn't feel shy, doesn't think it's wrong.
His work comes across as a very bohemian kind of thing. That's the kind of feel that I get. His sensitivity comes out of it, and people kind of mistake it for being a homosexual pattern in his personality. If you're dressed according to your body type, if you are wearing a well-tailored shirt, pink or black, I don't think that would define your sexuality. Or I'm not a very big fan of men getting their body hair removed unless it's a face or some other areas that people might prefer to talk about. But yeah, I'm not into it. I'm not. Definitely this whole idea of metrosexuality does not strike a chord with me.
I don't think I would consider him beautiful. I think more asexual today, because I've known the person for a period of time. If somebody who doesn't know him, Anay, and sees his work or himself sees him, he would be quite confused as to where Anay stands on the line, whether he's more masculine, whether he's feminine, whether he's in between. And I wouldn't say, again, handsome in that sense, but somewhere in between these, there's a grey area that's never always, and it's never black and white.
So in terms of the way he dressed up, the way he carry himself, the way he kept his, his hair, and the way he went earrings, they both are like, it's very masculine, I don't think there's anything feminine about it. It's very masculine. It's just like when you dealing with him on a one-to-one basis, then you feel a little bit of, feminine thing is coming out of him, See, nurturing is, it's more women stuff. It's more for motherly stuff, like, for example, like SMSing each other, Then they're always like, it's very, flirtatious SMS, which I'll say like a very, 100% masculine men have to do it.
In Sanskrit literature, we come across a description of the he-man, the heroic protagonist who in a way symbolizes masculinity. And he's often described as Shardul, like a tiger or like a lion, extremely boisterous. When you look at the Mahabharata, Duryodhan, what was his problem? What was his problem was really, he was a typical example of a macho man, and the way he treated, and I had.
Or choice of colors are more feminine, but exactly they're not feminine, because we see more of women wearing those colors and those jewelry, so we relate those to feminine. Wearing a sari, wearing a suit, having a sindoor, wearing some jewelry which is specially meant for women, and you wearing that means there's some psychological effect of femininity in you. So if I see him in that particular attire, or some attire which is specially meant for women, so I will be really shocked, and I feel that he is moving towards femininity.
I'm not showing the whole video, it might take a long time, so just kind of cutting short and showing you another one.
Have you heard of Ian Hislop?
Yes.
Is he queer?
Well, he's on television, isn't he?
Yes.
So I should think he probably is a queer, yes.
He does look like a queer, doesn't he?
Yeah, he looks like a queer.
And he sounds like a queer.
Yeah, he sounds like a queer.
Well, if he sounds like a queer, and he looks like a queer, and he's on television, I just think he's a probable queer, wouldn't you agree?
If he looks like a queer, sounds like a queer, and is on television, he's probably a queer, yes. Looks like a queer, sounds like a queer. He's not a probable queer.
Probably is a queer if he looks like a queer and he sounds like a queer. Probably a queer.
If he sounds like a queer, looks like a queer, he's probably a queer, yes.
Right, but I shall put him down as a probable queer.
He is married, of course. But then again, so is David Attenborough, and he's on television.
Oh, so he's probably a queer.
He looks like a queer.
He does look like a queer.
He sounds like a queer.
He does sound like a queer.
And he's on television.
He looks like a queer, he sounds like a queer, and he's on television. David Attenborough is probably a queer, yes.
I wonder if Hislop and Attenborough queer together.
Well, Bunny may know, he's a queer.
Bunny, you're a queer.
Oh, yes, I'm a frightful queer. Have you heard of Ian Hislop? Oh, yes.
And have you heard of David Attenborough?
Oh, yes. Are they queer together? Well, they're on television, aren't they?
Yes.
So they're probably queer together when the cameras aren't looking. Oh, they probably queer away together when their cameras aren't rolling.
Queer together when the cameras aren't shooting and their wives aren't looking, like a couple of probable queers.
Well, I don't have a picture of David Attenborough to hand, but I shall make a mental note that he's probably a queer, and I shall make a definite note that Hislop is a probable queer.
That's a very good idea.
Excellent. Have you heard of David Cameron?
Yes.
Is he a queer?
Well, he certainly looks like a queer, doesn't he?
Oh, he looks like a queer.
And I've heard him on the wireless, and he sounds like a queer.
Oh, he sounds like a queer and he looks like a queer.
If he sounds like a queer and looks like a queer, I should think he's probably a queer.
Probably is a queer if he looks like a queer and he sounds like a queer. Probably a queer.
If he sounds like a queer and looks like a queer, it's probably a queer, yes.
Sounds like a queer, looks like a queer.
Probably a queer.
Probably is a queer.
Probably a queer.
Probably a queer.
Probably a queer, yes.
Probably a queer.
Probably a queer.
Yeah, probably is a queer.
Cameron the queer, yes. He's married, of course. So this would queer the pitch against him being a queer, even though he looks like a queer.
He does look like a queer, doesn't he?
And he sounds like a queer.
He does sound like a queer.
So even though he looks like a queer and sounds like a queer...
He looks like a queer, he sounds like a queer.
He does. Yes, he does, yes. But he may not actually be a queer, as he's married.
Well, Bunny's married. You're married, aren't you, Bunny?
Oh, yes.
And Bunny's a queer. You're a queer, aren't you, Bunny? Oh, yes. Bunny's a queer.
Yes, yes. Well, then I should think this David Cameron fella probably is a queer.
Well, he probably is a queer.
If he looks like a queer, sounds like a queer, and Bunny's a queer, Cameron's probably a queer, yes.
He looks like a queer, he sounds like a queer, Bunny's a queer. I shall put him down as a probable queer. Yes. Good. Anne Heseltine's a very attractive woman, isn't she?
Yes.
Is her husband a queer?
Michael Heseltine?
Yes.
Yes, I should think he's probably a queer. He wears his hair like a queer.
He's the hair of a queer.
And he wears florid, double-breasted suits like a queer.
Oh, he dresses like a queer.
And he sounds like a queer.
Oh, he does sound like a frightful queer.
And he's an attractive wife, and so does Bunny, and he's a queer.
Bunny, your wife's attractive, isn't she?
Yes, she's still attractive.
And you're a queer, aren't you, Bunny?
Oh, yes, I'm an incorrigible old queer.
Does your wife mind you queering away?
No. She's very happy for me to queer away like Billy-O.
So if Heseltine sounds like a queer, looks like a queer, wears his hair like a queer, and florid double-breasted suits like a queer, and has an attractive wife like Bunny the queer here, I should think he's probably a queer.
Probably is a queer.
Probably a queer.
Probably a queer.
Probably a queer, yes.
Probably a queer.
Probably a queer.
Yeah, probably is a queer.
However, he is an extremely good shot. And that would militate somewhat against him being a queer.
So he looks like a queer. He sounds like a queer. He's got an attractive wife like Bunny, who probably lets him queer away like Billy-O, but he is an extremely good shot. Well, goodness me, this is all too confusing. I mean, I don't think I should sleep at all tonight.
Why don't you put him down as a part-time queer?
Well, is there such a thing?
Bunny, can you have a part-time queer?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, well, I'll put him down as that then. That's a very good idea. Down as married to a probable part-time queer. Excellent. Do you know who I mean by Elton
Yes.
Is he a queer?
Not as far as I know.
Really?
Bunny might be a better person to ask than me, though, because he's a queer himself. Bunny, you're a frightful queer, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
Do you know who we mean by Elton John?
Oh, yes.
Is he a queer?
Not as far as I know.
We don't think he is.
And this goes on. So that was my process as to what I started as when I was a photographer. As I said, like, I was a hunter and I became a farmer. And that's where we are right now. So we can take some questions now.
Well, if you notice, the video didn't work with my voice. So, Anay, have you had any issues with exhibiting such intimate work in Delhi?
There have been like every time the people want to talk about looking at desire, looking at self-portrait show, and the galleries do approach me for their work, but they always want to edit the work out. I don't really think galleries really have the balls to, at this point of time, to show the work as is. And they're very interested, but they always say, okay, let's take these two, to keep these two images out, then we can show it. I said, like, either it goes as is or it doesn't go at all. So most of the work that you saw right now, I think the Red Room series that was shown in Arco Madrid, and we had problems there also. And we also, then like the Chongqing Tale was shown in China itself, just where I did the residency. And otherwise, people find this work kind of too problematic to see it on the walls. And they love it when they see it in terms of as a presentation or otherwise, but on the walls of a gallery, yeah, it's a big problem as of right now.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not making work for like, in kind of a consumption or to be consumed by the public immediately, or it's just more of the fact, like, what is close to me, I'll keep working. And there are a lot of, right now we only showed you 4 series of work. There are many more series, and so I'm just keeping everything in a box right now. When the atmosphere is right, when the time is right, maybe some point of time people will want to see it, and then I will show that work. Till such time I'll keep on doing my commercial and editorial work to keep the kitchen fires burning. Yeah.
Before photography start, you are a model.
Yeah.
You're doing modeling. And then after that, you can, when you are a model, you are a front of camera. Then you came back of the camera.
Yeah.
And again, I am here looking, you again coming front of the camera. Because I know, because when I work with you, that time you doing the about Nitika. Then this work I am seeing first time. Or
That's
maybe
right.
some of work I saw.
Yeah.
But I'm looking here, again you came front of the camera.
Like when I was photographing people, when I was doing my first project, Generation Transition, things were very new in the sense, like when I was photographing the young people, living in had just started happening in the country. And in 2003, I shot a lot of couples in their environment and with their permission. And later on also I shot some people as such, but by the time the work goes on walls, these people are slightly uncomfortable seeing the images on the walls as such, and they withdraw, saying that they don't want to be seen as such. And decided that, like, if there is something that has to be said, I can, like, also always put myself in that particular position and say that through that itself, so that, like, at least the work gets seen. Otherwise, a lot of the work which I've shot has not been seen because people have had problems or they have had second thoughts about their work later on.
Hi, Anay. It was really great to see that presentation. And I'm going to kind of pick up where Vicky left off. So you were a model, and that industry sort of places a high emphasis on eroticism. And during your presentation, I was quite intrigued to hear you say that when you were young and a teenager and there was no pornographic material or a dearth of it, you used to dress up as a girl and kind of look at the mirror. And I'm a little curious about what you did after, but that's not my question. My question is sort of, I just mentioned that so that I can underline the autoerotic aspect of it. And in a lot of your newer work, post Binsa and specifically Red Room and the Chinese work and after, there is an element of autoeroticism. And yet it's kind of almost something that's incidental. So I wanted to ask you how you kind of perceive that vis-a-vis what you're trying to do with the work.
See, I love myself. I love the way I look.
Yes, we know.
And I don't know. I mean, like, there's this inherent desire which is very strong in me, and I think I have vivid imagination as well. I go into fantastical world, and there are a lot of things which have gone through my minds earlier, or maybe like I imagine things, and they work really well for me. And I just trying to understand my own self as to how these things happen, why they happen, and if I can kind of put them in a visual space as such. I'm not really sure I've been able to do those things because, as I said, there are many other things also which when I try to put them in pictures, they do not really seem like that until unless I present a whole essay to kind of go along with it. So I think it's all about myself, whatever thoughts I have been having, or I have had, or I have. I think, as I said, I think I have. I'm sure most of us do, but I personally feel that I have various multiple identities within me. And as I said, the level of masculinities may keep changing with those things, but it all depends, who my audiences are or with whom I'm sharing those things. So, and I don't really share each of my identities with everyone as such.
One last question.
Not a question.
Yes,
not a question. Just a suggestion.
Anita has a sorry. Oh, sorry, Bandip.
Not a question.
Can we
Can
we get a mic to Anita in the meantime?
Make a Brokeback Mountain just with yourself.
So you were saying that when you were photographing younger generations, especially when you were doing generation in transition, people came back to you a couple of years later and they didn't want to be seen on the walls.
Not couple of years later. If I shot in 2003, 2004, they did not want their images to be seen because maybe they were out of the relationship, or maybe they got married, and other people had problems being seen in that particular manner. The intimacy was a bit of a problem to be seen by everyone else.
Yeah, so just to take that further, then you said that, then I could put myself in that situation, photograph myself.
Not directly in terms of that situation itself. When I talk about my own self, I realized that when I was photographing other people, there were problems in terms of privacy issues or what they wanted to do. So I stopped working with people. I'm not putting myself in those people's position and photographing it because that's not really my space as such. I just don't photograph those people or those kind of situations now where people might be uncomfortable seeing those things. I only work with myself so that I don't have to address these issues.
No, but coming to the point I'm trying to make is that unfortunately, you started photographing yourself, trying to deal with whatever issues you had, and you still can't put them up on the walls. So you couldn't put them up earlier because of other people's reasons, and now that you put yourself in front of the camera, and it's a daring act, we got to see a lot of your butt, which is great. However, you still can't put all that up for the
every time there's a problem, one tries to find a solution, and maybe like right now, maybe for another 2 or 3 years, once my patience runs out and I realize that these things will not be go out, maybe I'll self-publish work, or maybe I'll show them do with other formats. But as I said, every time there's a problem, you have to find a solution. As a photographer, we're always doing that. Chasing problems and finding solutions for those.
Did you have a question? Quick one though, please.
Yeah. So in your very, very layered portraiture of the self within the self portraiture, and which is a big departure from a very traditional portraiture, making a portrait of someone else, where that when you're finally stepping out and looking at the image, there is some sort of loss which is left open for interpretation. But in your case, because you are on both sides, do you understand that loss? Do you feel it?
See, as I was telling through earlier also, that a lot of times I'm trying to say things what I feel, and at times it does not really come across in a pictorial manner the way I intended to. And a lot of times I had to scrap these series because what I wanted to say when what I ended up doing, it doesn't really doesn't work together. So when other person looks at the work, they start interpreting in a different manner. Even though most of my work can be interpreted at various levels, and I'm completely okay with the people deriving different meanings out of it. But a lot of times I'm not 100% sure of as to if it really comes out the way it is. That doesn't happen, yeah.
Thank you, Anay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.